Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Apito Zone. And we are wanted to thank you guys for joining in and joining us for today and talking about New York sports talk and what's been going on in the New York sports scene. And if you guys don't mind, please hit the like and the subscribe button. I do appreciate if you guys do that. And if you would like to, please also do not be afraid to comment in the chat screen. I will be reading out your comments and replying to some of the comments on the screen if need be. Wanted to thank you guys for coming on through. And as far as the first topic that I wanted to get out the way, and as far as start chiming in on was what was the New York Knicks conversation, as the Knicks have been pretty much the dominant talk as we're heading into the final stretch of the regular season, and they've went uh, for the most part. You can't really complain about what they've went through. They had a 7 game win streak, but then they followed up with the three straight losses. And then with those three straight losses, it came the question of the viability of being a championship contender again, and possibly even, you know, making the Eastern Conference Finals again with, the emergence of the Pistons, and then of course, the Celtics, who haven't gone away even with Tatum being injured for most of the season, and now he's back and they look like they haven't missed a beat. So it's now looking more like a possible disappointing season, which we'll get into. But after that 3 game losing streak, they responded with another 3 game winning streak, and pretty much heading into a big showdown against the Boston Celtics on Amazon Prime Video tomorrow at 7:30. And it's going to be interesting to see how that matchup unfolds. Everyone says that the Knicks do have the size advantage with Karl Anthony Towns, and that's going to definitely put a huge emphasis on what he can, do on, against this Boston team. And since they are expecting the size advantage to go the Knicks way, you can definitely expect people are going to be looking at Karl Anthony Towns to kind of be the aggressor, calling for the ball and kind of, dictating for plays to come to him, and hopefully he can execute and show out in this game, and possibly make it a little harder for the Celtics down the stretch. We'll see how things happen. There's going to be a few possible things. A lot of people are bringing up the issue with coaching and how the implementation of Karl Anthony Towns and the implementation of the other players like OG Anunoby and Mikal Bridges, and how Jalen Brunson is facilitating and creating those designs for those plays. And that's where Mike Brown is getting a lot of heat. But I do think that the talk of trying to automatically set up disappointment to automatically leading to him getting fired is a little much. I don't think he's going to get fired. I think that what will end up happening is if the Knicks get disappointed, they will. It's going to be based off of how it looks, and I don't see them losing in the first round unless if they get a bad matchup and and something drastic happens. It's not out of the question or the possibility, but um, to lose in the second round, definitely a high possibility, and to lose in the conference finals or losing in the NBA finals is something that people can hope for, but it can be a reality that they might, fall short of those scenarios. I don't think it's, time to get rid of the coach and time to restructure the team because it's going to be based on who's available. And when it comes to the structure of the team, I think that the issue is going to be more of what they invested in certain trades rather than trading away certain pieces that we think may match. As far as Mike Brown's concerned, I think that we have to wait and see how it works, see how the playoffs work out, see how the matchups work out, and then also see what type of players are going to be needed to kind of fit the system. It's going to be, I don't think it's going to be something where if you blow up the team, you're going to blow up the head coach with it after year one. And as far as my the takeaways that I usually have with the Knicks team is more of the play style. It does look like the way they have won these games has been more of what we've normally seen with the Knicks, which is more of kind of a Tib centric offense where it looks like it's Jalen Brunson, and it's going to be interesting to see what type of game flow it is during the playoffs and who is the going to be the. Oh, I see Christian Arguello 9356 put finesse team, and that I do agree. The Knicks are a finesse team, and it's going to be interesting to see what type of matchup that the Knicks get and what type of game plan and adjustments are going to be made because I don't doubt the IQ of this Knicks team with the Villanova players winning national championships and having that pedigree and having that experience to survive and advance and go through that playoff run and make the adjustments that are needed. It's more of will they be talented enough to actually get to that finish line and making the NBA finals or possibly winning it all. Because I do think that part of it is going to be on Carl Anthony Towns becoming a consistent big man, and the big man we are asking him to become is one of those all-time Hall of Fame great, big men. And I know that people say that we're not asking him, but that's kind of what we are asking him to do. If we are asking him to be that preeminent, second option. As far as Jalen Brunson, what I would like to see more from Jalen Brunson is more of a playmaking thing. We've seen him have those flashes in certain games where he's had the high assist output, but and I think that it's going to take a little bit of picking the right spots in the right games because there's going to be days where Jalen Brunson is going to be doubled and tripled and not going to be able to have uh, have the good shooting percentages during the playoffs. Let me just read some comments here. Don't want to ignore you guys. We got Eberman 0-0. Knicks and Boston will decide the East. Do not expect the Celtics to shoot 25 for 100 from three again. Good to see you, Jose. Keep up the good. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for the kind words, Mike. And no, I do agree with you. I do not expect Boston to shoot 25 for 100 like they did those first two games in last year's playoffs. That was an atrocious shooting night, and I think that that was more arrogance from the coaching and the Boston Celtics system and their game plan and their analytics department because throughout the whole season they never missed that many threes, so they just kept running that well, and it was really a bad, I think a bad coaching error on Missoula, because when you saw game two, when they were actually, you know, executing down low, getting some, points in early in that game too, you saw them build up that lead, and then they started settling for threes again. So we'll see how this matchup looks out. Christian Arguello, 9.356. Celtics are looking dangerous. Oh, yeah, they definitely are looking dangerous. And the one thing about the Celtics that really kind of, scared me and concerned me was they were pretty much good throughout the whole season, and it looked like they didn't miss a beat. Jaylen Brown is definitely was, you know, top MVP candidate, and for them to do very well is pretty much, fantastic. E- E- Eberman 0-0s. Cat's been great lately. That I do agree with. I do like Cat's aggressiveness on the boards for all the, he's soft talk and etc. Anyone who has played basketball and has went after rebounds know that that's not a easy proposition. You do get elbow to the face. You do get a lot of shoving and pushing and tugs from down low, so you have to be able to go in and still perform and out muscle those people to get the rebound. So we're gonna see. I do think that from that aspect he has been very good, and to average a double double and lead the league in double doubles and have be the second leading rebounder in the league. I think that it does take a lot. I don't expect to see anything tomorrow night from either team. Tatum has been good on offense. Defensively, he's compromised. Oh yeah, I do think I do agree with that, and it's still going to take Tatum a while to get 100%. They always say that it takes at least a year before people start actually um, feeling like everything's themselves. That's what what's been reported and said. I am not a doctor, and I do not. I have not have any experience in recovering from that type of injury. So, but he's defensively, he's definitely going to be compromised, as he's not going to be able to have some of those angles and moves. But offensively, he has been very good. Also blew 20-point leads twice, not happening. Shamit, huge 6'5", needed, good defender, and was a good point guard. Okay, no, and I do agree with that about Shamit, and I do think that he is going to be needed, especially in the rotation. And he's actually surprised me where, I'm going to get into it later with Mikal Bridges, where it seems like Brown has been trusting him more down the stretch in certain games. So it's going to be interesting to see how the playoffs work out. And he has been a very good defender. That I definitely do agree with. He's definitely been worth the value. As far as the Mikal Bridges, when it comes to Mikal Bridges, I think that people are just going to constantly bring it up because of the assets that were to give that were given up to get him, which were 5 first-round picks, and then not only the 5 first-round picks that could have been used for another trade for a more accomplished superstar. You also then double down and re-signed him to an extension. It's not a max contract, but it is a contract that is going to take a big percentage of the cap. And you have to wonder, is this going to work out long term with what he's been contributing? I think the uh, I got Heberman saying Bridges a poor help defender, okay on the man, and yeah, I could see. Yeah, no, there's definitely from on the help defending and fighting through screens and kind of trying to be that. It definitely is not as polished and what you expected from what was advertised when we got him in the trade. I'm not expecting him to be the 22-point scorer in Brooklyn, but I am expecting the kind of the Swiss Army knife that we saw him be with the Suns. And I think one of the comparisons made when the trade was made, because everybody was looking at this Knicks team as like, the that 2004 Pistons team, was that Mikal Bridges was supposed to be like that Rip Hamilton, that person that was gonna fight through screens, be that or world defender with OG Anunoby, and kind of and be able to hit, those big shots down the stretch. And he did do that against the Celtics. He did hit some big shots, and he did go out and, have a couple of good defensive plays during the playoffs where he was a key contributor. It's going to be interesting to see how this playoffs turn out. I'm hoping that they can all hit on the points that I was talking about with the Knicks as far as my concern with the playmaking, Carl Anthony Towns, and then with Mikal Bridges, because it's gonna take all the whole starting five and every person coming off the bench to really be good and have a successful playoff run. It's gonna take all the whole roster, and because not everyone, as we know, is gonna have their best game in the playoffs every single game. There's gonna be games where certain people are not showing up. What are your thoughts if the Knicks get bounced in the second round? Is it a failed season? Oof. Is it a failed season? Removing the context of them getting rid of last year's coach, Tom Thibodeau, because I think that that's more of a narration created by people who are possibly either our friends or connected to people. And I'm not going to say I'm going to say I have to see how it looks, and how that second round matchup is. If we're facing the Pistons in the second round and we get destroyed in 5 games where it doesn't look competitive, and the game that they gave us was just a game just to kind of like avoid that sweep, and they gave us a gentleman's sweep in 5 games, I'm gonna be more on the fact that it's a failure, and the reason being is the fact that the Knicks did beat did beat the Pistons last year, and even though we've seen the Pistons make a gigantic improvement by being the number one seed throughout most of the year, it's still gonna have that sour taste where a team behind you ended up overlapping you. If they lose to the Celtics, like in a tough 6 or 7 game series, I can't really be too mad at that, because last year's win against the Celtics was very fortunate, as Spike mentioned in the comments. They blew 2 20-point games in those first 2 games by settling for a lot of threes and missing a lot of threes, and that could have been very different. And, I'm not going to say the Tatum injury played a role, because by the time he had the injury, the momentum was going in the Knicks direction, and it looked like they were closing out to the Knicks were closing out that game to win, and that would have been up 3-1. So I'm not going to go too crazy on that, because then you're asking the Celtics to win 3 straight games, and a playoff situation where you have to be perfect, and that's pretty much a tall task. So I'm not going to say that the Tatum injury had a huge part in it. But the Knicks were still very fortunate that all of those things did play in their advantage, and to have that rematch again in that same spot in the second round, I'm not, too highly, I'm not, too confident going into that one. So we'll see. Um, but thank you for that, Mike Brown, sixth choice, Kid, Malone, Udoka, Jenkins. Yeah, I know that Kid, Udoka, and Jenkins were definitely in there. Malone, if I'm not mistaken, did not get an interview. I think that they had already moved past kind of looking for that style of coach where they felt like Malone was too much into like a bit of like the Tibbs personality like, and it looked like they were going with more of the collaborator. I know that Kid was definitely axed, and Jenkins was definitely axed, and Udoka was definitely axed because the Knicks axed the franchises for permission to speak with those coaches, and they all said no. And pretty much by the Knicks asking them to speak, pretty much got them all, nice contract extensions. So they were definitely able to, help those coaches get, a little bit more money as well. But as far as with Mike Brown, I'm still waiting and seeing. I know that from what it looks like, the team it doesn't look like certain players do fit on, what Mike Brown is wanting. So I got to see what it's gonna essentially take this off season and fast forwarding, and I really can't do that right now. We're pretty much we're knee deep in trying to finish out the season strong and get into the playoffs and see how the matchups go in. I want to pose this question to the guys that are in the chat: like, who would you think would be a good matchup for the Knicks for them to face, and who would you want to try to avoid in the first round? That I'll leave that for you guys to throw that in the chat, and I'll just give you guys a couple minutes to type that out. As far as the other components of the Knicks, as far as what will happen in the off season with Giannis and everything else, that's kind of why I definitely want to put off that talk because we're past the deadline and there's no way to make the improvement now, and we're just at this point, this is the team who we have. And as far as talking ourselves into failure, I don't want to do that. I'm just trying to be as positive. Tough question. Yeah, I could see that could be a tough question that I asked. Yeah, from I guess I'll try to answer my own question. I definitely would not like to face the Atlanta Hawks. Oh, good observance. Brown, wrong coach, Tibbs back. Dolan won't lose his pride. No, definitely not. I don't think Dolan will lose his pride. I think that I don't know if Dolan was too hands on in this situation. I think that this was a situation where there were definitely people in upper management that voiced certain concerns about the collaboration and what was going on, and there were certain players that also voiced concerns. And I know we don't want to throw certain players under the bus, but one of those players was Mikal Bridges, where he voiced certain concerns. And it looked like he was one of those players that was expressed so much concern that he possibly insinuated that he might not be that he wasn't going to be back. So if Tibbs was going to continue to be the coach, so we'll see how this works out. But there can be ramifications. I do see certain situation. I can see a certain situation where um, I could see certain players or certain glue players possibly being traded to get a more, Mike Brown type player, and kind of shaking up the to shake up, some of the core aspects of the team. So we'll see how it works out. As for to kind of wrap up the Knicks conversation, they'll be facing the Celtics tomorrow at 7:30. Tibbs would rather coach than get paid, not to two, and Bridges and Cat were two. Oh yeah, oh no, and Cat was also a person that expressed, certain concerns with Tom Thibodeau and the coaching and the coaching adjustments and everything, and I know also Precious Achua was a player who also expressed concerns, and then there's a few others that were pretty much that were kind of not utilized. As we know, Landry Shamet was one of those players. So we'll see how it works out with this. The one thing I will say about the Mike Brown and going through this year, players like the run that Tyler Kolek had, we would not be seeing. I know we would not be seeing that, and the minutes that Mohamed Diarra has had, I know that we would not be seeing. I think the strides that those two players have made with the minutes that they've gotten and have kind of shown that they can be at NBA assets. I really don't see that happening with Coach Tibbs if he's running this roster. I do think that it would be more Jalen Brunson and Josh Hart getting 40 minutes a night and kind of having a six-man rotation roster, because that's just who he ends up to what ends up usually ends up happening. So we'll see how it works out, and it's gonna be interesting to see how this season finishes out for the Knicks. I'm gonna transition into some WNBA talk. Still keep it basketball. There was some big news that happened in the WNBA circles as the Chicago Sky traded WNBA superstar Angel Reece to the Atlanta Dream for two first round picks. I think that Chicago is not ready for the negative reaction, not only from Angel Reese, but also from, some of its, fan base. Chicago has made a lot of like interesting moves, and I would say in the last couple of years when they traded Mabry to the Suns, and they kind of went on a losing streak after that, and then they pretty much let go Kennedy Carter, and then they essentially fired Teresa Witherspoon, and that I don't know how that was received in their locker rooms, but it looked like a lot of players did have respect for her as a coach, and then they went in a new direction with a new coach, and they got off to a bad start, and then it pretty much didn't improve. They were winning games towards the end, but then Angel Reese made her comments, and it kind of pretty much, drew a spotlight where it kind of, proved that Chicago wasn't ready to be a contender yet, and they kind of just were starting to look at what they can possibly best get. And I think that for the Atlanta Dream, this definitely kind of gives them a core to kind of pretty much, try to get into that championship contender sphere, and to compete with the Liberty and the Indiana Fever. So it's going to be interesting to see how that team formulates and gels together. Um, as far as for the WNBA is in the free agency period. So how this season kind of shakes up and what rosters make certain moves will definitely be an indicator and a determination of what storylines are going to be built and how the season will unfold. As far as for a New York focus with the WNBA, the New York Liberty focused on this offseason on making sure that they keep their core intact. Sabrina Ionescu was designated as a core player, giving the Liberty negotiation rights to offer her the Supermax. Brianna Stewart announced that she's planning to stay. John Cole Jones, there's reports that she's planning to stay. And also something that they didn't have last year, Lainey Hamilton is expected to return after missing all of last year with a knee injury. So that's going to be a big addition, and we'll see how this season works out. There was a coaching change. Chris DeMarco, former Golden State assistant, is pretty much taking over for Sandy Brondello, whose contract was not renewed after the playoff exit. Um, I think even though she had Reece and Grinder, how's that going? How's that going to go? I don't know. That's going to be interesting. We're going to see how that's going to go. Um, it's gonna be something that the coaching staff in Atlanta, and it's gonna be interesting to see what type of scheme they come up with to kind of get all the players to play together. All right, and then as far as for the as for taking over, I'm sorry, to with Coach Chris DeMarco coming over from Golden State, taking over for Sandy Brondello, whose contract wasn't renewed. Even though she did get the Liberty over the hump and won the title a couple years ago. It How this season played out with John Quell Jones getting injured and kind of falling like falling apart towards the end, towards the playoffs, towards that playoff run. It kind of pretty much stated that there might be needed of a different voice or a different upgrade at the coaching helms, and we'll see if Chris DeMarco can be able to continue on with the Liberty being contenders and possibly getting holding up a couple another trophies while we have this core intact, because this is something that we know championship windows are very short, and we want for the Liberty, you want to make sure that it's ongoing. Liberty did have some key departures. Naraya Sabali was selected by the Toronto Tempo in their expansion draft. They are good. Toronto Tempo is a new team that has been added. This is a big loss for the Liberty as it's another critical depth piece being taken, and this actually makes it the second year in a row that an expansion draft took away a critical piece from the roster, and it's going to be something that the Liberty are going to have to go out and see what they can get either in the draft or in free agency and in the tryouts to see how they can replace the production. There were more roster trimmings as the Liberty did renounce the rights of three other players to pretty much meet the roster limits. We're going to move on to the MLB opening week, Yankees and Mets talk. If there's any uh, Yankees or Mets talk that you guys definitely want to put in the chat or the screen, I'll definitely be reading it out loud. Thank you guys for those who are on with me and contributing and being part of the show. Now, as far as for MLB, we just had opening week essentially. The opening day festivities happened. We had the Yankees open up with the Giants on Netflix, and then everybody else played the day after. And I will say, well, for the Yankees have been playing on pretty much on fire these the in the first 10 games. They're starting off 8-2, 3.5 game lead on Baltimore and Tampa Bay, and they're currently facing the A's on Amazon Prime at this point. And I think it's just way too early to come up with the consensus take with just being 10 games in. I do think that it is a little crazy to try to be hypercritical when the team is 8-2 and there's still 152 more games to go. But from what I'm seeing right now, I do like what I'm seeing from the Yankees. Their pitching staff has been very good for the most part. Their bullpen has been shaky, but at the end of the day, not everything's going to be perfect when you're starting out in the season, but it has been fun to watch this stretch of them go 8-2, and hopefully because this is something that we have seen the Yankees do where they get off to these hot streaks. Usually by June or July there is a bit of a dip off, and what people like to call the market correction. um, we're trying. We hope that that market correction is not as in epic dive as this as usually the upswings are in early in the season. So we'll see how it works out with the Yankees, but hopefully they don't give us heart attacks over the summer, and they can pretty much keep a good pace and possibly be a team that gets home field advantage throughout the whole American League playoffs, and possibly go in with an advantage in the World Series, and possibly, and who knows, might be facing a different team than other than the Dodgers or something. But we'll see how that works out. Don't want to get too ahead of ourselves, but I do like what I'm seeing. 8-2, and they've been very good. I, as far as for the New York Mets, they begin the season starting 7-4. Currently finishing up their game against the Diamondbacks, and I think it's once again. The one thing I will say about the Mets, I think it's way too early for fans to start booing newly signed players, because it's still not only it's still in the first month, we haven't even gotten to fifth, 10 games yet, and we're already starting to boo someone who is having struggles. Like, let's at least wait till 20 games, but it is telling of the microwave society. What I just wanted to hear, what do you guys think of what's going on? I got Christian Arguello 9356. Jazz just needs to throw the ball to first quicker, man, for that runner to beat out that throw. Yeah. Yeah, there are times where that can happen with Jazz Chisholm, where there's certain plays where it feels like um, the quickness of it. But I'm not going to disagree. I definitely got to look at that play again, but I definitely want to see it. I don't think Jazz will be the 40-40 player on his contract year. 40-40, that's a lot. That's a lot to ask for. I could see him possibly getting the 40 steals. I think 40 home runs. It is doable in Yankee Stadium. Not with the short field and in that scenario sense, but to 40 home runs is still a lot to get, and for someone for Jazz's stature, I think that that's a big tall task. I think, 30-30, we could say, hey, at least, hey, at least we don't boo Santa. A dig at Philadelphia fans. All right. So yeah, so we just with Jazz, I think there's definitely, I think a 30-30 year could definitely be in line for him, but 40-40 or 50-50, I think that's just definitely up in the skies. But who knows? I'm not gonna shoot someone else's dreams down. If they work hard at it and try to do it, then all power to them. But I know that that's definitely a tall task. As far as if anything else, just moving on from the baseball talk. Just giving a New York sports recap. One of my fraternity brothers definitely commented on a Facebook group to remind everyone that the last major sports team to win a championship in New York was the New York Giants back all those years ago. And as a little joke in his commentary towards the posting that I put for the show. But as far as the as far as the New York sports recap, Emma, we've got NYCFC on the MLS side coming off of a 1-1 draw, and they're currently in a three-way tie for second place on the table, only separated by 2 points from the um, first place on the in the Eastern Conference, and their next game is up against Vancouver at 7:30. And if I'm not mistaken, the MLS games are on Apple TV. Red Bull New York. Red Bulls win against Cincinnati FC 4-2, also placing them in another three-way tie for third place in the Eastern Conference, with only 1 point separating them from second place and 3 points separating them from first place. I would have to say that um, it's still very early in the MLS season. The fact that the top half is already jumbled up with three-way ties for the top three spots, it definitely shows that it's early, and we'll see how it works out. And it's going to be imperative for both New York soccer teams in the MLS to keep racking up the W's. The more W's you rack up early, the better position you are for the playoffs, and the better form you are, and the better form you are, the more the better the chance it is that you're going to win the MLS Cup. So we'll see how this works out for both NYCFC and the Red Bulls New York. As far as NBA talk, as far as the Nets, I guess they're proving they're not tanking by winning the last two games, and they face the Pacers in another winnable game tomorrow at 7:30. And with the Nets being in last place in the division with a 20-59 record, even I don't know why I'm giving time on this show to them. It's just been a horrible season for the Nets, and for them to win these games is just inexcusable at this point. It's like, who are you trying to prove, and what are you trying to if you're trying to prove that you're not tanking, then I guess so be it. But we'll see how who the Nets draft, and hopefully the Nets can play some competitive basketball and make it a rivalry. How about that fight yesterday? Suspended players Lopez and Soler for the long punch. Oh man. You know what? I gotta get back on that. I did not watch the fight. That is bad on me, and I did not. I pretty much have not heard about the fight, so that's on me. But thank you for bringing that up, Christian Arguello 9356. I'll definitely respond to that the next time we're on. As far as NHL news, the New Jersey Devils, the Devils continue to be inconsistent, finishing their last part of their season only ahead of the New York Rangers in their division, and it's only adding to the frustration because the Devils did start off the season very well, but in those first 10 games, where it looked like they were almost winning every game, but they hit a schneid after Hughes got hurt, and then they haven't been able to recover since. And it looks like the goal scoring has went on an uptick, but they have not. It hasn't translated into a consistent win streak enough to actually make a playoff run. As far as the Rangers are somehow making a late season push. I do kid, but they did win their last five. They won 5 of their last 6 games, and it's continuing to show a different feel. And in those 5 wins, they've only surrendered 1 goal a game. So the goalkeeping has definitely been on point, and we'll see how the Rangers somehow finish. These last few games, they might be costing themselves, draft position. We'll see. As far as for the New York Islanders, they are still in the playoff run, and but it is looking more unlike now. What was starting to look unlikely is now starting to look like it can. The Islanders do have a little bit of control of their own destiny. They still have about 4 games left, and there's only a few points out from separating them from either the third spot in their division to make that playoff spot, or the second wild card spot. And they do have a head-to-head matchup with Ottawa in one of those 4 games, so they can definitely be able to do some damage. Hopefully, the Islanders can, possibly win out and really, be the last New York team standing, as they, might be the only New York team with the Stanley Cup playoff run for this year. So I'm hoping for it because I definitely would like to highlight some type of hockey on this show while the playoffs is going, and be able to talk about it. But we'll see how this season finishes out. As far as for NFL news, the draft is coming up. We've gotten a lot of news for the Jets and the Giants. I'm not going to get too much into the draft positioning, but I do want to hear from the Jets and the Giant fans. What do you guys think that your team, or what would you guys like for your teams to do? Because for the New York Jets, the Jets are looking at Avril Reese or David Bailey at the number 2 spot. I do prefer the linebacker in Avril Reese, but we'll see how who the Jets go through. And it still could be a possibility where the Jets still might trade down a couple of spots if they can, get an advantageous trade for more draft positioning for either next year's draft, or getting more picks for this year's draft. As far as the quarterback news, and on the quarterback front, the Jets might be interested in taking Ty Simpson. All news are reporting that they possibly love Ty Simpson. Not a fan at taking him at 16. I do think that the that second pick at the 16 spot is kind of more valuable to go somewhere else, possibly at wide receiver, to than taking a quarterback at that spot. I think taking quarterback at that spot, it's still pretty much just to get that 5th year status. I think it pretty much, a first rounder is a first rounder, and just the implication of a first rounder, there's going to be one, a rush to kind of put him out there, and two, I'm not in the business of rushing quarterbacks who did not have a lot of game rep experience, and Ty Simpson does have that resume where there wasn't a lot of games. So we'll see how that works. And then as far as for the other pick for the day two picks, because the Jets do have two second rounders, they might go with a wide receiver or another defensive pick. So we'll see how that turns out. But I would like for the Jets to kind of possibly wait and see if Ty Simpson drops to the second round and possibly pick him up there and get him at a bargain rather than feeling like they have to take him at 16 and then lose out on a possible Pro Bowl wide receiver that you could have matched up with Garrett Wilson. And sadly, it can make a difference. It can make a difference on who you pick when the more clear cut options are taken away. As far as the New York Giants, because I do see here Christian Arguello chimes in with the first. Nets just don't want to get fined. Okay, that's for the Brooklyn Nets and trying to prove that they're not tanking. I could definitely see that, not wanting to get fined, but it is interesting to see how the Nets are suddenly won those last two games. And it looks like Christian Arguello. It looks like Styles for the Giants, and I think that is what the hope is for most Giant fans. Sonny Styles from Ohio State, so we'll see how that works out. Um, I do like Sonny Styles at the linebacker position, and he does look like a game changer. So we'll see how that works out, but. I do hear Giant fans thinking of Sonny Styles. Also, another player that could be thrown in the mix is the safety Caleb Downs. Issue is do you want to draft a safety at that top five spot? Because if you're drafting a safety at that top five spot, you're kind of expecting that safety to kind of be, a game changing, game wrecking player, and to kind of be almost like that perfect player can't really have a lot of flaws, as we saw with the New York Jets. Jamal Adams was definitely a game wrecker in some respects, but then also had a lot of flaws that we saw that get exposed in Seattle. So you want to make sure that if you're drafting a safety that high, it's you're getting the quality of of guys like the Ed Reed. And I don't that's going to be remains to see with Caleb Downs. And then also another player that is been getting a lot of talk is the running back Jeremiah Love. And definitely wanted to throw this out there for the Giant fans in the chat. What do you think if the Giants do draft Jeremiah Love, especially, being a few years removed from, supposedly learning from the lesson of not picking a running back with a high draft pick when because of everyone said that picking Saquon Barkley was the wrong pick for that year. So I wanted to throw that out there for you guys. Would you like the Giants drafting Jeremiah Love, a running back at that spot? We'll see how if they do draft Jeremiah Love. I think that it won't be a bad pick, but it is going to be, since it is a running back. It is the running back position. There is going to be a rush to try to see what his um, value or worth or discussion is. We'll see. We'll see what the Giants do with that fifth pick. It's going to be interesting, and there's also the possibility of the Giants possibly trading down and possibly getting more assets for either the future, or we'll see how that works out. And Also, Dexter Lawrence making news with the Giants, being upset, I guess, wanting more money, which is understandable. Any person who works professionally always wants more money, but there's also has to be within reason. He is coming off of an off year where it looks like he is coming off of an injury, so we'll see how that works out. I don't think that he's been very good. Too high and need more depth. Oh, yes. And I think with Dexter Lawrence, I think that he definitely needs to have a show out year and kind of be that, force on the defensive front to kind of show that value, because if he's not getting the double teams, then what's the point? So we'll see how it work. We'll see how his season works out for the Giants. As far as for, because we did talk about the Liberty, but wanted to give some talk with the New York focus. The New York Sirens hockey uh, are the women's hockey team in New York, and the Sirens are currently in sixth place, and they're 3 points out of the last playoff spot. And this month of April has seen them pick up 2 wins, so that was very critical in getting within those 3 points. And their next game is on against Minnesota on Saturday, 1 p.m., and it looks like it's going to be on MSG. And then New York Gotham FC went through a tough stretch. They haven't won since March 14th, recording 2 losses and 2 draws in their last 4 games, and they fall into the bottom four in the table. The positive outlook is it's still the beginning, where they can get a couple of wins and be able to, be able to climb up the table. Negative outlook is, if they don't get a few wins, they can see that they can start getting into an early fight, an early uphill battle, and that's something you want to try to avoid. Um, Once again, want to thank everyone who is joining in. If you could hit the like button, the subscribe, I really appreciate you guys for joining in and chiming in the chat and um, being part of the show. Uh, Now, going into the fight game and sports entertainment aspect, just to get the sports entertainment aspect out the way, the WWE is heading into it. It's pretty much in its WrestleMania season. Roman Reigns and CM Punk have been pretty much carrying the mantle in this promotion of this WrestleMania, and the promos and the build and everything that has come with both of them has been it's definitely been as advertised, and hit on a lot of different points. And just pretty much going to throw this out there. Where would you guys rank this, rivalry heading into WrestleMania as far as one of the great WrestleMania builds? Because it's definitely for two people that have not had a long storied franchised rivalry in ring, so to speak. It's, definitely build up on a lot of personal animosity from, um, uh, outside promotions and drama. Also, the other match that I'm looking forward to is the Obafemi Brock Lesnar match. I think the build up has been awesome for that matchup. How they've gotten Obafemi over and how Brock has pretty much sold in that situation has really built up this match. And I was talking about it with one of my fraternity brothers over the weekend on our way to an event where he was hoping that this was going to be, more than 15 minutes. And I could definitely understand that. I would definitely want something that is definitely going to resemble more of a wrestling match where they both get to work their stuff in and both have a good match where it doesn't look like a squash. And what I would like to, possibly see and throw out there is, Obafemi become the next big thing, coin the next big thing, and Brock Lesnar kind of pass that mantle on, and who knows, we might get a Paul Heyman betrayal at the end, something that that could be interesting, but I would like to, see that. But Brock Lesnar winning and possibly keeping his aura up as being the beast incarnate is something that they can go with as well. And then the one negative aspect, and sadly, it's I want to say for this WrestleMania build, it has been the Cody Rhodes, Randy Orton build up of the match. I don't want to get too harsh on it because it was like something that was thrown in last minute where they changed the champion and they have now Randy Orton being the heel, and with how these two, wrestling superstars are positioned, I just feel like it should be definitely a bigger story and a bigger story invested into what's been going on and what we've been seeing. Um, with how much they've invested in Cody Rhodes these last few years, with signing him from AEW, giving him the main event spot, giving him the main title for a few years, and having all this investment in him, and then the pedigree of Randy Orton being a multiple time champion and having this type of match. It should feel like the same build up and you know cachet that we saw when Cody Rhodes was facing John Cena, and it just doesn't feel like that big or grand, and it feels like it's kind of either taking a step back, or and that might be because of the fact that it's rushed, or that might be because of the fact that they don't know how to be able to create something that's really from me as a fan to sink my teeth into, because it just feels like for the pedigree of both of the stars that they built here with Randy Orton and Cody Rhodes, I feel like this should definitely be a better quality storyline and feud that goes down the stretch here. As far as for the fight game, boxing, I brought up the Sebastian Fundora Keith Thurman fight in our last show. Sebastian Fundora did defeat Keith Thurman, and Sebastian continues to show that he is a very good and elite prospect, and pretty much hopefully more wins down the stretch for him. And then as for UFC fights that are coming up, one did catch my eye on June 14th, where the lightweight title is going to be up for grabs, where Topriora will be facing Gaethje, and that's going to be a definitely an interesting fight that I definitely want to be able to see, where Topriora is the recognized champion and Gaethje is the interim, and looks like we'll be having an undisputed lightweight champion on June 14th. So we'll see. And as far as that is concerned, that wraps up the fight and sports entertainment part aspect of the show. And as far as the final part of the show, which I call the final whistle, is usually a topic that I just riff or laugh about. That usually has me thinking in a mode, or sport, or or if there's certain a certain sports topic that kind of captivates me, and I kind of want to talk and give it like some final thoughts. Last time I was on, I talked about like a little bit of my history and the introduction and my path as a sports fan, and how it's kind of guided me and went through out sports within, and went through my high school and my college days, and what I went through as a professional, and going over that journey, and how it's kind of shaped my overall outlook on sports and life, and how things are. um I want to thank everyone that did get to, see that episode and did get to, comment and say the nice things. So I do appreciate you guys for that. The topic that I wanted to talk about was, because people have brought this up to me, is my interest in women's sports and athletics, and how I got, interested in watching it, and why I usually end up being an advocate for it when a lot of people are usually not for it. I guess a lot of it is the influence of growing up with my mom, my grandmother, and my older sister. And with my older sister, she was definitely athletic and was definitely playing softball a lot in her day, and definitely was being coached up by my grandmother. And I ended up getting into baseball while she was playing softball. So it definitely was influenced from that aspect. And then also as a kid, going into the factor, my sister's favorite movie was a Tom Hanks movie called A League of Our Own, and I would watch that movie thousands of times. And as much as people make fun of the ending, and with letting go of the ball at the end, that was a movie that pretty much kind of showed a part of American history that I gravitated to, being a history buff, and and learning about the different leagues that were built up at during the World War II period, to kind of provide that entertainment while people are out at war in the Pacific and in Europe. It kind of definitely made me like that movie and appreciate that time, and also be able to understand, and do more of a digger deeper, and research regarding that time and what was going on. And then also the fact that within high school, when ended up going to Murray Bertram High School, the women's basketball team was definitely a dominant factor, and they pretty much, throughout my time, almost never lost a game throughout that time. So it was definitely a fun experience going to the Garden, paying for the ticket, and then also being able to stay in the Garden and watching the pretty much Lincoln High School play. And my first experience, when I went to the Garden, I got to see Sebastian Telfair, while the girls crushed Francis Lewis earlier. So it's gonna be definitely interesting to see. So it was definitely interesting to see that all unfold, and watching, you know, all of that, and it's something that I pretty much made part of watching sports, and being a person that does have a few nieces, and very very supportive, and trying to help them in finding their identity and their competitive athletic spirit. It's something that it's not a fad, it's not a gimmick that I have. It is something that I have become invested over the years, especially within my years of working in education, where um, being pretty much interacting with a lot of student athletes and having conversations and advice talks. So it is something that I'm definitely interested and invested in. And so whatever I can do, whether it's just a short blurb or doing a breakdown on Liberty basketball or doing a short blurb on the Gotham or the Sirens, it's something that I definitely want to give a focus and a highlight to kind of remind people that there is professional sports leagues for women, and and they should be highlighted and be given that space as well. So just wanted to thank you guys for your time today, and I want to thank you guys for watching the show. If you have stuck through all the way to the end, I appreciate you. Please hit the like and the subscribe button. Definitely want to hear from you more, and do not be afraid to reach out on the email and give me some feedback if you like as well. I want to thank you guys for your time today, and I hope you have a fantastic rest of your evening.